He sneered at my father, calling him just the help and slipping him a measly $5 bill. What my fiancé didn't realize was that the waiter he humiliated was actually my dad in disguise, and I saw everything. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't served hot or cold, but with calculated precision when they least expect it. I'm Elaine Mitchell, 32, a corporate attorney specializing in contract law at one of Chicago's top firms. I've spent my career identifying loopholes and protecting clients from them. Never thought I'd need those skills in my personal life. Can you believe how perfect everything is? My maid of honor whispered as we watched guests filter into the reception hall. The string quartet played softly, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and arrangements of white roses and baby's breath adorned every table. Connor had insisted on the lakeside manor for our wedding, Chicago's most prestigious venue, with its panoramic views of Lake Michigan. Everything gleamed with wealth and status, exactly as he wanted. I smiled and nodded, but my stomach was in knots. Not wedding jitters, something else entirely. Something I couldn't quite name. My relationship with Connor Pearson had been a whirlwind. We met at a charity gala 18 months ago, where his family's investment firm was the main sponsor. He was charming, successful, and seemed genuinely interested in my opinions. Within 6 months we were engaged, and he was introducing me to his world of country clubs, yacht parties, and the right people. It was different from how I grew up. My parents, Tom and Marie Mitchell, owned a small catering business in suburban Illinois. We were comfortable, but never wealthy. They worked hard to put me through college and law school, often taking extra jobs on weekends. Dad would come home with swollen feet from catering events, but never complained. "Education first, princess," he'd say. "That's your ticket." When Connor proposed with a 3-carat diamond ring, my parents were cautiously happy for me. "He seems... ambitious," my dad said, which I knew was his diplomatic way of expressing concern. Mom was more direct. "Are you sure you know him well enough, honey?" I dismissed their concerns as overprotectiveness. They just didn't understand Connor's world. The first red flag appeared during our engagement dinner. Connor corrected my table etiquette in front of his parents, placing his hand over mine to move my water glass to the proper position. "Let me help you with that, sweetheart," he said with a tight smile. His mother nodded approvingly, while his father barely looked up from his phone. I felt my cheeks burn but told myself it was nothing. Everyone was nervous. Then came the suggestions about my wardrobe, my hair, even my friends. "Lauren's husband is in retail banking?" "That's quaint," he'd say after meeting my college roommate and her husband. "Maybe we should focus on building relationships with people more aligned with our future." Our future. It always came back to his vision of our future. The wedding planning became a series of Connor's decisions that I merely witnessed. He vetoed my choices for the venue, the music, the food. Everything had to meet his family's standards. When I suggested having my dad's catering company provide some family recipe appetizers for the cocktail hour, Connor laughed. "Elaine, we can't serve home-style cooking to this senior partner at Goldman Sachs. My father has business connections attending. This isn't a backyard barbecue." I swallowed my disappointment and agreed. To compensate, I asked if Dad could at least be part of the day somehow. "He'll be walking you down the aisle. Isn't that enough?" Connor replied, not looking up from his phone. "Besides, your parents should just relax and enjoy being guests. They've probably never been to an event like this." The comment stung, but I let it go. Peace before the wedding, right? 2 weeks before the big day, my father called. "Ellie, I've been thinking. Would Connor mind if I helped out a bit at the reception? Nothing major, just checking on things in the background." "I feel useless just sitting there." "Dad, you don't need to work at my wedding. It's not about working, princess. I just... I want to contribute. Your mom and I aren't paying for much of this shindig, and it would make me feel better. I could be incognito, no one would know." I heard something in his voice. "Bride, maybe Anna couldn't say no." "I'll talk to Connor." Connor's response was swift and dismissive. "Absolutely not. What would people think if they found out my father-in-law was serving drinks at my wedding? It's embarrassing." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of our downtown condo. When did I become someone who let a man speak about my father that way? But the invitations were sent, deposits paid, arrangements finalized. Cold feet, I told myself. Just cold feet. The wedding day arrived with picture-perfect weather. Everything proceeded according to plan. The ceremony in the garden overlooking the lake. Photos on the grand staircase. Cocktail hour on the terrace. I was floating through it all, smiling when prompted, posing when directed. During the reception, I excused myself to freshen up. Walking back through the service corridor, a shortcut to avoid guests wanting to chat, I heard Connor's voice around the corner. He sounded agitated. I said, "Krug, not whatever cheap champagne this is. Do I need to speak to your manager?" I peeked around the corner and froze. Connor was facing a server, an older man with graying hair at his temples, dressed in the venue's standard black and white uniform. My father. Dad was undercover, just as he'd suggested. Somehow he'd arranged it with the catering manager, probably calling in a professional favor. And Connor had no idea who he was speaking to. "I apologize, sir," my father said, his voice professionally neutral. "I'll have that corrected immediately." "See that you do," Connor snapped. "I'm not paying thousands for subpar service. This isn't some diner." My father nodded and turned to go, but Connor wasn't finished. "And while you're at it, make sure the staff knows to keep the service entrance clear. I saw someone's old Honda parked where the valet might see it. This isn't the employee lot at Walmart. That Honda was my dad's car, the one he'd had since I was in high school, the one he'd taught me to drive in." "Very good, sir," Dad replied, his face impressively blank. Connor pulled out his wallet and extracted a $5 bill, holding it out with 2 fingers. "Here, maybe this will help you remember." My father took the bill with a slight bow. "Thank you, sir. Most generous." As Dad walked away, Connor turned to his best man who'd joined him. "Can you believe these people? I specifically told the coordinator I wanted top-tier staff." The best man laughed. "At least you tipped him." "That was generous considering the service." "Please," Connor scoffed. "I just didn't want him spitting in my champagne when he brings the good stuff. Know your audience, right? These service people need to be managed." I ducked back around the corner, heart pounding. In that moment, something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't an isolated incident or wedding stress. This was Connor. The real Connor. When he thought no one who mattered was watching. I leaned against the wall, my designer gown rustling against the corridor's painted cinder block. The diamond on my finger caught the fluorescent light, throwing fractured rainbows onto the industrial carpet. 5 hours ago I'd said I'd do single quotes. Now I was hiding in a service hallway, watching my new husband reveal his true character by humiliating my father. My phone buzzed with a text from my maid of honor. "Where are you?" "Cake cutting in 10. I took a deep breath and smoothed my dress. I had decisions to make, but first, I had a performance to deliver. The perfect bride, radiant with joy, cutting cake with her dream husband. Back in the reception, I plastered on a smile and took my place next to Connor for the cake cutting. His arm around my waist felt heavier now, his smile to the crowd more like a predator's display than an expression of joy. When he fed me cake, he pushed it a little too firmly against my lips, staining my lipstick. The photographer caught it all, the perfect moment. "You've got a little something," he whispered, brushing his thumb roughly across my bottom lip in front of everyone. The crowd laughed. Charming, they thought. Attentive. I knew better now. Throughout the evening, I watched him. The way he spoke down to the venue staff, the dismissive glances at my college friends, the performance he put on for his business associates. Most telling was how he treated my parents with a thin veneer of respect that barely concealed his disdain. My father continued his undercover role, occasionally catching my eye across the room with the slightest nod. We'd always had a special connection, communicating volumes in small gestures. His eyes said he was fine, but I knew better. I'd seen the flash of hurt when Connor had dressed him down. As the night progressed, I began calculating. My legal training kicking in, categorizing facts, identifying leverage, formulating strategy. Connor had insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect the family assets, but I'd negotiated several key provisions concessions he'd made to pacify me, never expecting them to be relevant. While guests danced and drank, I slipped away to the bridal suite with my small clutch purse. Inside was my phone, ID, and a USB drive containing copies of all our legal documents, the prenup, wedding certificate, condo agreement, joint accounts. I always kept backups. It was a professional habit that Connor had teased me about. "Always the careful lawyer," he'd say. "Don't you trust me?" I plugged the drive into my laptop and reviewed the prenup's key sections. Article 4. Paragraph C outlined conditions under which the honeymoon expenses would be treated as shared marital debt versus Connor's personal obligation. We were scheduled to leave for the Maldives tomorrow, a 3-week luxury trip costing nearly $50,000. Article 9 detailed the revocation procedures for the provisional will Connor had insisted I create, naming him as primary beneficiary of my trust fund, the one my grandmother had established, which matured on my wedding day. Most importantly, Appendix B contained the morality clause Connor's conservative family had demanded any public behavior deemed embarrassing or damaging to the Pearson name within the first 30 days of marriage would trigger penalty clauses against the offending party. I smiled slightly. Connor's father, Charles Pearson, was notoriously image-conscious. His investment firm managed funds for several prominent religious organizations and political figures. Scandal was his kryptonite. I heard the door open behind me and quickly closed the laptop. My mother entered, concern etched on her face. "Elaine? Everyone's looking for you. The band wants to know if you're ready for the first dance." I turned to face her. "Mom, did you know Dad is working as a server?" She sighed and sat beside me on the plush ottoman. "He wanted to surprise you with something special. The catering manager is an old friend, and your father thought he could arrange a special dessert table with some of your childhood favorites. He was supposed to reveal himself during the final hour. It was meant to be a gift." My throat tightened. "Connor doesn't know." "No," she said carefully. "We thought it best to keep it a surprise for everyone. I saw him. Mom, I saw how Connor treated Dad, like he was nothing." My voice broke on the last word. Mom took my hand, her expression softening. "Your father has worked service jobs his whole life, honey. He's heard worse, but not at my wedding, not from my husband." The word husband tasted bitter now. She studied my face. "What are you thinking, Elaine?" "I'm thinking I made a terrible mistake." She squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, your father and I are behind you." 100%. I nodded, a plan forming. "I need you to do something for me. Tell Dad to stay in character no matter what happens next. And find Jessica. Tell her I need her in here right away." Jessica, my maid of honor and fellow attorney, would understand exactly what I needed to do. Mom nodded and left to deliver my messages. 5 minutes later, Jessica rushed in, champagne flute in hand. "What's wrong?" "Your mom looked serious." "I need legal advice," I said, opening my laptop again. "Starting with how to cancel a honeymoon without triggering certain provisions of my prenup." Jessica's eyes widened, but she immediately sat down beside me, setting her champagne aside. "Show me." For the next 20 minutes, we reviewed documents and formulated a strategy. Jessica, ever the sharp litigator, identified 3 potential approaches. "This morality clause is your best leverage," she said, pointing to the screen. "It's broadly worded in your favor. Any action that brings public embarrassment or shame to either family, that's subjective territory." "Exactly." I nodded. "And I have witnesses." By the time we finished, the reception was entering its final hour. I touched up my makeup, fixed my hair, and returned to the ballroom with renewed purpose. This wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about justice, for my father, for myself, and for anyone else Connor had deemed beneath him. I found him by the bar, laughing with his groomsmen. He barely acknowledged me when I approached, continuing his story about a recent golf tournament. I waited patiently, the perfect supporting wife, until he finished. "There you are," he finally said. "People were asking where you disappeared to." "I had some details to take care of," I replied smoothly. "Actually, could I borrow you for a moment? There's something important we need to discuss." He looked annoyed at the interruption but excused himself. I led him to a quiet corner of the terrace, away from guests but still visible through the glass doors, important for what came next. "What's so urgent it couldn't wait until after the reception?" he asked, checking his watch. I took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something about one of the servers." His expression darkened. "Are they causing problems?" "I'll have the manager remove them immediately." "No," I said calmly. "Nothing like that. It's about the older gentleman you spoke with earlier, the one serving champagne." "What about him?" Connor looked bored already. "The one you called just the help, the one whose car you mocked, the one you tipped $5 to bring you better champagne." His brow furrowed slightly. "How do you know about that?" "Because that server is my father." The color drained from Connor's face. What? My father wanted to contribute something special to our wedding day, so he arranged with the catering manager, his old friend, to work undercover and surprise us later with a special dessert table. It's been serving drinks all night. Connor's expression cycled rapidly through shock, disbelief, and calculation. He finally settled on damage control. Elaine, I had no idea. You have to believe me. If I'd known you would have what? Treated him with basic human dignity? That shouldn't depend on knowing his identity, Connor. He reached for my hand. Sweetheart, it was a misunderstanding. Wedding stress. You know how important today was? I just wanted everything perfect for us. Perfect for us? Or perfect for your image? I pulled my hand away. I saw how you speak to people when you think no one important is watching. That's who you really are. His face hardened. You're overreacting. It was nothing personal, just business. Sometimes you have to be firm with the help to get results. The help, I repeated. Like my father, you mean? The man who worked 60-hour weeks to put me through law school? The man who taught me my worth isn't determined by how much money I have or who knows my name. Connor glanced around, noticing some guests watching us through the glass. His voice dropped to an urgent whisper. We can discuss this later. People are starting to stare. Let them, I said, my voice steady. In fact, I have an announcement to make. His eyes widened. Elaine, don't make a scene. Think about what you're doing. I have thought about it. Very carefully. I turned and walked back into the reception hall. Connor following close behind. Hissing warnings I ignored. I approached the bandleader and whispered my request. He looked surprised but nodded, signaling the musicians to stop mid-song. The abrupt silence caught everyone's attention. The bandleader handed me the microphone with a sympathetic smile. He'd clearly interpreted our terrace conversation correctly. Good evening, everyone, I began, my litigation voice in full effect, clear, controlled, commanding. I want to thank you all for sharing this day with us. Connor stood frozen at the edge of the dance floor, his face a mask of controlled panic. Before we conclude our celebration, I wanted to acknowledge someone very special who went above and beyond to make today memorable. Dad, would you please join me? Across the room, my father hesitated, still in his server's uniform. My mother gently nudged him forward. As he made his way through the surprised crowd, murmurs rippled across the room. Many of you know my father, Tom Mitchell. What you may not know is that he's been working behind the scenes tonight. I put my arm around him as he reached me, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. Dad owns Mitchell Family Catering, and he wanted to contribute his expertise to our wedding. He arranged a special surprise dessert table featuring family recipes that mean a lot to me. Nervous applause scattered through the crowd. Connor remained motionless, his eyes darting between me, my father, and his own parents, who looked bewildered. What some of you may have witnessed, I continued, was my new husband's interaction with my father earlier this evening, not realizing who he was speaking to. The room fell completely silent. Connor's mother covered her mouth with one hand. His father's expression darkened. Connor demonstrated exactly how he treats people he considers beneath him. He called my father just the help, mocked his car, and tipped him $5 to bring better champagne after berating him for serving the wrong brand. Gasps and uncomfortable shifting filled the room. I maintained my calm, professional demeanor, the same one I used in courtrooms when delivering damaging evidence. I've always believed that character is revealed not by how we treat our equals, but by how we treat those we perceive as having less power or status than ourselves. My father squeezed my shoulder. Ellie, you don't have to do this, he whispered. Yes, I do, Dad, I replied, loud enough for the microphone to catch. Because I was raised to stand up for what's right, I faced the crowd again. In light of what I've witnessed today, I've made several decisions. First, I'm canceling our honeymoon to the Maldives. Second, I've already initiated the revocation of my provisional will. And third, I paused, making direct eye contact with Connor's father, whose reputation for moral rectitude was legendary in Chicago business circles. I believe the morality clause in our prenuptial agreement has been breached through actions that have brought public embarrassment to my family. Connor finally unfroze, striding toward me with a tight, desperate smile. Elaine is clearly overwhelmed, he announced loudly, reaching for the microphone. Wedding emotions, you know how it is. I stepped back, keeping the microphone. I'm not overwhelmed, Connor. I'm seeing clearly for the first time. I turned back to the guests. The Mitchell family would never embarrass you by asking you to leave. The reception will continue as planned with the special dessert table my father arranged. However, I will be departing. Those who wish to contact me can reach me through Jessica Lane, my maid of honor and legal representative for all matters going forward. Jessica stepped forward, her business card already extended toward Connor's stunned father. The power move wasn't lost on anyone in the room. I handed the microphone back to the band leader, who looked both impressed and terrified. Perhaps something upbeat now, I suggested quietly. As the band launched into an inappropriately cheerful song, I took my father's arm. "Let's go, Dad." We walked through the parting crowd, my mother joining us at the ballroom doors. Connor remained rooted in place, his groomsmen surrounding him in a protective cluster while guests pretended not to stare. In the quiet of the hotel corridor, my father finally spoke. "Princess, are you sure about this? Marriage is a partnership based on mutual respect," I finished. "And I deserve a partner who respects not just me, but the people I love. The people who made me who I am." My mother squeezed my hand. "What's your plan?" I straightened my shoulders. "First, I'm changing out of this dress. Then we're going home, our home, where I've already arranged for a security team to change the locks on the condo while Connor's at the reception. Tomorrow, Jessica and I will file the necessary paperwork based on the prenup violations." My father looked worried. "His family has powerful connections." "So do I," I replied, starting with every person in that ballroom who just witnessed his true character. The court of public opinion matters to the Pearsons more than any legal judgment. As we walked toward the elevator, my phone buzzed with messages, fams, family, even Connor's younger sister expressing support. Word was spreading fast. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped in with my parents, leaving behind the reception, the disappointed guests, and the man I'd mistaken for someone worthy of my love. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Connor racing down the hallway, his face contorted with rage and panic. Too late. The careful image he'd cultivated was cracking, revealing the ugly truth beneath. The prenup had a clause about public embarrassment, but it never specified who might cause it. Connor had crafted his own downfall, and I'd simply held up a mirror. In that moment, I felt something unexpected, not satisfaction or vindication, but relief. The heavy weight of pretending, of making excuses, of shrinking myself to fit into Connor's world, it was gone. "Well," my father said with a small smile, loosening his server's bow tie, "that wasn't quite how I planned to surprise you at the dessert table." Despite everything, I laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. The elevator descended, and with each floor I felt myself rising, becoming Elaine Mitchell again, my father's daughter, my own advocate, and no one's accessory. This wasn't the ending I'd planned for my wedding day. But as any good attorney knows, sometimes the most powerful move is walking away from a bad deal. And I was just getting started. That first night back at my parents' house was surreal. I sat at the kitchen table in sweatpants and a t-shirt, my $8,000 wedding gown draped over a chair in the corner, while my mother made hot chocolate like she used to when I was a teenager coming home from a bad day at school. "I can't believe I didn't see it," I said, warming my hands around the mug. There were so many red flags. My father, now changed into his comfortable flannel shirt and jeans, joined us at the table. "Don't blame yourself, princess. People like Connor are expert manipulators. They show you what you want to see until they think they've got you locked down." My phone had been buzzing nonstop since we left the reception. I've silenced all notifications except from a select few people, Jessica, my boss, and a private investigator I'd hired 6 weeks ago. Yes, 6 weeks. That's another part of the story I haven't shared yet. The first hints of trouble had appeared just after our engagement party, when Connor insisted I add him as a signatory to my accounts for convenience. I'd resisted. Citing professional ethics, many of my firm's clients had confidential billing arrangements that passed through my personal accounts. It wasn't entirely true, but it was enough to make him back off temporarily. Then came the comment about my grandmother's trust fund. "It's substantial, right? We should think about how to invest it once it matures on our wedding day," he'd said casually over dinner. "My father's firm can handle it, of course." I hadn't told Connor the exact amount of the trust. I'd mentioned its existence once, briefly, during a late-night conversation about our families. His detailed knowledge made me uneasy. The breaking point came when I discovered he'd been going through my desk at home, financial documents moved. My laptop mysteriously opened when I was certain I'd closed it. When confronted, he'd laughed it off. Just trying to organize our paperwork, sweetheart. We're getting married. No secrets, right? That night, I'd contacted Jessica for a recommendation, and she'd connected me with Michael Reeves, a discreet private investigator who specialized in financial background checks. I told myself it was just due diligence, the same thing I'd do for a major client before signing contracts. Mike's preliminary report had been concerning, but not definitive. Connor's personal finances showed some irregularities, large cash withdrawals, unexplained transfers, credit card debt despite his family's wealth. But nothing conclusive enough to justify calling off a wedding with 300 guests and non-refundable deposits. So I decided to wait, to watch, to gather more information while proceeding with the wedding plans. I'd even convinced myself that I was being paranoid, that my attorney's skepticism was making me see problems where none existed. Until tonight. Until I saw with perfect clarity exactly who Connor Pearson was. My phone buzzed again, a text from Jessica, * news traveling fast, sees family and damage control. Father already called our managing partner, they golf together. You still have firm support. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. my office. * I showed the message to my parents. They're scared, my father said, nodding. Good. But they're powerful, my mother countered, worry creasing her brow. Connor's family knows everyone in Chicago. So do I replied. And unlike Connor, I've actually earned my reputation. Just then, an email notification appeared, Mike Reeves, with a subject line that made my heart race. * final report. Urgent *. I opened it immediately. *Ms. Mitchell **, following our earlier conversation about accelerating the investigation. I've completed the deep dive into the Pearson family finances and Connor Pearson's personal accounts. Findings exceed initial concerns. Evidence suggests systematic pattern of *1. Using romantic relationships to access funds from wealthy partners *2. Possible identity theft of at least 2 former fiancés *3. Shell company structure linked to accounts in common islands *4. Discrepancies in Pearson family investment firms' client fund allocations Most critically, Connor Pearson was previously engaged to Melissa Winters 2020 to 2021, daughter of Senator James Winters. Engagement ended abruptly, followed by private settlement with extensive NDA ** detailed documentation attached. Given sensitivity, recommend in-person review at your earliest convenience. *M. Reeves *. I stared at the screen, a cold sensation spreading through my chest. This wasn't just about Connor's treatment of service staff, or his condescension toward my family. This was calculated, possibly criminal behavior, and I'd nearly become his next victim. Elaine? My mother's voice pulled me back. What is it? I passed her my phone. As she read, her expression shifted from concern to shock. My God, she whispered, handing the phone to my father. Dad's face darkened as he read. That son of a... He caught himself, took a deep breath. Sorry, but this explains a lot. What do you mean? I asked. He hesitated. When I was working at the reception, I overheard a conversation between Connor and his best man in the men's room. They didn't know I was in one of the stalls. My stomach tightened. What did they say? Connor was laughing about how your grandmother's trust fund would solve his temporary liquidity problem. His friend asked if you knew about his debts, and Connor said, she's smart, but she's also trusting. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. The betrayal cut deep, but it also cemented my resolve. This wasn't just about walking away from a bad marriage. It was about stopping Connor before he could harm anyone else. I need to call Jessica, I said, standing up. In my old bedroom, surrounded by debate team trophies and law school textbooks I'd never taken to the condo I shared with Connor. I laid out everything for Jessica Mike's report. My father's overheard conversation, my suspicions about Connor's interest in my finances. This changes the approach, she said after listening. We're not just negotiating a clean break anymore. We're potentially looking at criminal charges, SEC violations if his father's firm is involved. Are you prepared for that? Yes, I said without hesitation. Whatever it takes. Then here's what we do ... single quotes the next morning. While Connor was likely nursing a hangover and plotting his counterattack. I was seated in Jessica's corner office downtown with Mike Reeves and Patricia Winters, a senior partner at my firm who, as it turned out, was Senator Winters' sister-in-law and Melissa Winters' aunt. When Jessica called, I couldn't believe it, Patricia said, her normally composed demeanor slipping to reveal genuine anger. The pattern is identical to what happened with Melissa. The whirlwind romance, the charming exterior, the subtle isolation from friends and family. What happened with Melissa exactly? I asked. Patricia exchanged glances with Mike. Melissa discovered right before the wedding that Connor had emptied several of her investment accounts. When confronted, he became threatening. James, my brother-in-law, used his connections to handle it quietly. The family was worried about scandal affecting his Senate position, so Connor just walked away, free to find his next target? The injustice made my blood boil. Unfortunately, yes. The NDA was ironclad. Melissa couldn't even warn other women about him. But it doesn't prevent evidence from being discovered independently. Patricia slid a folder across the table. This contains everything we legally can share without violating the agreement. Mike found most of it on his own anyway. The folder contained bank statements, transfer records, and a pattern of behavior that matched exactly what Connor had been attempting with me. "What's our next step?" I asked. Jessica leaned forward. "We have several options. Civil suit based on prenup violations is the obvious one. But given this new information, we could also report to the SEC FBI Financial Crimes Division or the State Attorney General. All of the above," I said firmly. "But first, I want to meet with Melissa Winters." Patricia looked surprised. "That might be difficult given the NDA, not if I'm just having lunch with my colleague's niece." "Nothing in the NDA prevents her from listening to my story, even if she can't share hers." Mike nodded approvingly. "Smart. And while you're building that alliance, I'll continue gathering evidence on the Pearson family finances. From what I've found so far, Connor's father might not be clean either. Be careful," I cautioned. "Charles Pearson has connections throughout the city, so do you," Jessica reminded me. "Half the legal community was at your wedding yesterday. They all witnessed Connor's behavior and your response. The narrative is already forming, and it's not in his favor." She was right. My phone had dozens of supportive messages from colleagues, law school classmates, and even judges I'd appeared before. The Chicago legal community was small, and word traveled fast. As we wrapped up the meeting, my phone rang, Connor's name appearing on the screen for the first time since last night. "Put it on speaker," Jessica advised. "We'll all be witnesses," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Hello, Connor, Elaine?" His voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk. Your little stunt last night was inappropriate and embarrassing." "Inappropriate and embarrassing," I repeated. Interesting choice of words for someone who publicly humiliated my father. "I told you, I didn't know who he was. It was a misunderstanding that could have been handled privately. Instead, you chose to create a scene. I chose to stand up for my family. Something I should have done much sooner." He sighed, shifting to a more conciliatory tone. "Look, we both said things in the heat of the moment. Let's sit down, just the two of us, and talk this through. We can still salvage this. There's nothing to salvage, Connor. I've seen who you really are. Because of one mistake? People are complex, Elaine. You're a lawyer. You understand that better than anyone. No one should be judged on their worst moment." His words were smooth, reasonable, exactly the kind of argument that would have swayed me a day earlier. But now, surrounded by evidence of his true character, they rang hollow. "You're right. People shouldn't be judged by one mistake. That's why I'm also considering the hidden credit card debt, the unexplained cash withdrawals, your sudden interest in my grandmother's trust fund, and your history with Melissa Winters." A long silence followed. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a threatening whisper. "You've been investigating me? Due diligence, Connor. Something I should have done before accepting your proposal. You have no idea who you're dealing with. All pretense of reconciliation vanished. My family will crush your career. No firm in Chicago will touch you." I met Jessica's eyes and she nodded encouragingly. "Actually, Connor, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. That's why I've already filed complaints with the SEC regarding discrepancies in your father's investment firm, specifically related to client fund allocations. The evidence is quite compelling." Another silence, this one heavier. "You're bluffing." But his voice lacked conviction. "I never bluff in negotiations. You should know that by now." Here's what's going to happen. You'll stay away from me and my family. You'll not contest any of the prenup provisions. And you'll return any access you have to my personal information, financial or otherwise. And if I don't agree to your terms, then the SEC investigation will be the least of your concerns. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division is also very interested in patterns of identity theft and fraud targeting wealthy women, particularly when one of those women is a U.S. senator's daughter. The sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit my mark. You can't prove anything, he said finally. I don't need to prove it beyond reasonable doubt right now. I just need enough evidence to launch investigations that will unravel your family's carefully constructed image. How will your father's clients react to even a hint of financial impropriety? How many will withdraw their funds at the first sign of trouble? The Pearson name means everything to your father, doesn't it? This isn't over, Connor growled. Yes, it is. I ended the call and looked up at my colleagues. He'll try something else. He's too narcissistic to accept defeat. Let him try, Jessica said. We've got the upper hand, Patricia nodded in agreement. The firm is behind you, Elaine. Connor's father already called the managing partner this morning to pressure him into controlling you. It didn't go well for him. What happened? I asked. Martin told him that unlike the Pearson family, our firm doesn't consider ethics optional. Then he hung up on him. I smiled, genuinely touched by the support. Thank you. All of you. Don't thank us yet, Mike cautioned. This is just beginning. Connor and his family won't go down without a fight. He was right, of course. By that afternoon, I discovered that Connor had attempted to access our joint accounts, only to find I'd already moved my portion of the funds. He'd tried to enter our condo, only to be turned away by the security team I'd hired. He'd even called my office, claiming a family emergency, but my assistant briefed on the situation had blocked him. Each thwarted attempt increased his desperation. By evening, he'd resorted to a new tactic, calling mutual friends to paint me as unstable, claiming I'd had a nervous breakdown at our wedding. Fortunately, most of those friends had witnessed his behavior firsthand and weren't buying his version of events. Several called to warn me about his attempts to discredit me. 3 days after the wedding, that wasn't. I finally met Melissa Winters at a quiet cafe in Evanston, far from downtown Chicago where we might be recognized. Despite the NDA preventing her from discussing Connor directly, our conversation was illuminating. I know what it's like to discover someone isn't who you thought they were, she said carefully. To realize that the future you planned is built on lies. How did you move past it? I asked. She sipped her tea, considering her words. First, I protected myself financially, legally, emotionally. Then I channeled my anger into something constructive. What did you do? I couldn't talk about my specific experience, but I could help others. I started volunteering with the financial literacy program for women, teaching them to recognize warning signs of financial abuse and manipulation. The patterns are often similar. I nodded, understanding what she wasn't explicitly saying. That sounds fulfilling. It is. And healing. She leaned forward. I hear you're building a case. Yes. It's complicated, but we're making progress. Her eyes lit with something like vindication. Good. Some people need to be stopped, not just avoided. As we parted, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Make him pay not just for you, but for all of us." I returned to work the following Monday, head held high despite the whispers and curious glances. My boss had been supportive, granting me flexibility to deal with the legal aftermath while maintaining my client responsibilities. The news had spread throughout Chicago's professional circles, with versions ranging from fairly accurate to wildly exaggerated. I neither confirmed nor denied the rumors, focusing instead on building our case against Connor and his family. Mid-morning, I received a text from an unknown number. *, watch your back. The Pearsons aren't finished with you. *, I forwarded it to Mike, who traced it to a burner phone purchased with cash. Untraceable, but the threat was clear. That afternoon, I discovered exactly what the message meant when a senior client requested an urgent meeting, one I'd been cultivating for months, whose business would have guaranteed my partnership track. "I'm afraid we'll be moving our business elsewhere," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Nothing personal, just a better fit with another firm. May I ask which firm?" I kept my voice professional despite knowing the answer. Wilson, Pearson, and Associates. Charles Pearson's law firm. They made a compelling offer. I nodded, maintaining my composure. "I understand. Thank you for your honesty." As soon as he left, I called Jessica. "They're going after my clients. Connor's father is poaching them." "We expected this," she reminded me. "This is actually good news." "How is losing a major client good news?" "'Cause it proves coordination and intent. We can add tortious interference to our claims. And it shows they're scared enough to fight dirty." She was right, but the victory felt hollow as 2 more clients called that week with similar messages. The Pearsons were systematically targeting my professional reputation, the area they knew mattered most to me. Meanwhile, Connor had shifted tactics, now presenting himself as the wronged party. He'd given a tearful interview to a society columnist, claiming he was blindsided by my disproportionate reaction to a simple misunderstanding. The columnist, a longtime friend of the Pearson family, portrayed me as a calculating gold digger who'd orchestrated the entire scene to extract maximum financial benefit. The article made me physically ill, but my parents and Jessica helped me maintain perspective. "This is what cornered animals do," Dad said. "They lash out blindly, hoping to wound, and it reeks of desperation," Jessica added. "No one who witnessed what happened believes this version." She was right. For every negative piece, there were colleagues, friends, and even wedding guests who publicly defended me. The court of public opinion remained divided, but leaning in my favor. 2 weeks after the wedding, our legal strategy began bearing fruit. The SEC had opened a preliminary investigation into Pearson investments based on the evidence we'd provided. Mike had uncovered 3 more women with similar stories to mine and Melissa's, all with connections to wealthy families. All approached by Connor with the same playbook. None had gone through at the wedding, but each reported financial losses and emotional trauma from their relationships with him. None had come forward previously, either due to embarrassment or fear of the Pearson family's influence. With their statements carefully worded to avoid any NDA violations, our case strengthened considerably. We now had a documented pattern of predatory behavior spanning years. I was reviewing these statements in my office when my assistant buzzed me. "Elaine, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent and personal." "Who is it?" "Catherine Pearson. Connor's sister." I hesitated, immediately suspicious. Catherine and I had never been close. She'd always maintained a cool distance during family gatherings. Sending her could be Connor's latest manipulation tactic. "Send her in," I decided. Whatever she wanted, I needed to hear it. Catherine entered, looking nothing like the polished socialite I remembered from family events. Her face was drawn, her designer outfit replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. She perched nervously on the edge of the chair across from my desk. "Thank you for seeing me," she began. "I know you have every reason to throw me out. Why are you here, Catherine?" She twisted her hands in her lap. "To warn you, and to ask for your help." She glanced at the door. "What I'm about to tell you could destroy my family, but I can't stay silent anymore. Not after what Connor did to you and what he's done to others." I leaned forward. "I'm listening. Connor isn't just taking advantage of wealthy women for their money. He's helping my father cover up serious financial irregularities in our investment firm. They've been misappropriating client funds for years." This aligned with what Mike had discovered, but hearing it confirmed by an insider was stunning. "Why are you telling me this now?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I found out I've been part of it without knowing. My signature is on documents I never read, authorizing transfers I never approved. When the SEC investigation goes deeper, I'll be implicated too. And you want immunity in exchange for testimony?" I didn't phrase it as a question. She nodded. "Yes. But also because what they did to you was wrong. What they've done to others is wrong. And they're planning worse." "What do you mean?" "Connor knows you have evidence. He and my father are planning to destroy it and discredit you completely. They've hired people to hack your accounts, plant false evidence, even break into your apartment. They're desperate." I maintained my composure despite the chill her words sent through me. "Do you have proof of these plans?" She pulled out her phone. It recorded a conversation between them yesterday. I knew no one would believe me without evidence. The recording was damning Connor and Charles Pearson explicitly discussing computer hacking, planting false evidence, and making sure she regrets crossing us. "I'll need a copy of this," I said when it finished. "Already sent to your email, along with financial documents I've been collecting. Enough to prove what they've been doing." She stood to leave. "I should go before they realize I'm here." "Catherine," I called as she reached the door. "Why now?" You must have suspected what they were doing before. She paused, her expression haunted. Because at your wedding, when you stood up for your father, I realized I'd never had anyone stand up for me that way. I've spent my life enabling terrible men because they were family. I'm done being complicit. After she left, I immediately called Jessica, Mike, and Patricia. Catherine's evidence was the break we needed, proof of not just financial crimes, but of an ongoing conspiracy to obstruct justice and harass a witness. We moved quickly, submitting the new evidence to authorities and filing for an emergency restraining order against Connor and Charles Pearson. By evening, the FBI had opened a formal investigation, and agents were securing Pearson investment offices to prevent document destruction. That night, as I worked late at the office reviewing case files, I received an alert from the security system at my condominium detected possible break-in. I called the police immediately, then watched in real time through the security cameras as two men methodically searched my home, photographing documents and planting what appeared to be listening devices. When police arrived minutes later, they caught the men red-handed. Both were private investigators on the Pearson payroll, carrying falsified warrants and a flash drive containing malware intended for my computer. Their arrests made the morning news, along with speculation about the Pearson family's involvement. By noon, the story had escalated when federal agents were photographed escorting Charles Pearson from his offices. Connor called me in a fury, all pretense abandoned. You think you've won? This isn't over. I still have friends you don't know about, connections you can't touch. You'll never be safe in the city again. Is that a threat, Connor? Because this call is being recorded. And threatening a federal witness is another felony to add to your growing list. He hung up without another word. The following days brought a cascade of developments. Charles Pearson charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Connor charged as a co-conspirator. Catherine granted limited immunity in exchange for her testimony. Clients of Pearson Investments frantically withdrawing their funds. And the firm itself placed under regulatory control. The Society columnist who had smeared me published a retraction and apology, claiming she'd been misled by sources she trusted. The clients Connor's father had poached began calling, asking if I would consider representing them again. 3 weeks after what should have been my wedding day, I sat in my parents' backyard, watching the sunset with a glass of wine. My father joined me, settling into the adjacent chair. How are you holding up, princess? I considered the question carefully. Tired, vindicated, sad sometimes when I think about what could have been if Connor had been the person I thought he was. He nodded. That's natural. You're grieving the future you thought you'd have. But I'm also relieved, I continued, and proud of what we've accomplished. Connor and his father won't be able to hurt anyone else. You did that, Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. You stood up not just for yourself, but for every woman they victimized. That's who I raised you to be. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I learned from the best. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. * turn on Channel 7 News, now. * I pulled up the live stream on my phone, and Dad leaned in to watch. The anchor's expression was serious as she reported, * breaking news in the ongoing Pearson financial scandal. Connor Pearson, already facing multiple federal charges, has now been linked to similar schemes in 3 other states. Sources close to the investigation reveal that Pearson may have targeted at least 7 women from prominent families over the past decade, using multiple aliases and carefully crafted personas. **. Additionally, former clients of Pearson Investments have filed a class action lawsuit alleging over $50 million in misappropriated funds. Financial experts are calling this one of the most significant fraud cases in Chicago history. The scandal was first exposed when Chicago attorney Elaine Mitchell, Pearson's former fiancé, discovered irregularities just after their wedding ceremony 3 weeks ago. The report continued. But I'd heard enough. This wasn't just about Connor's treatment of my father anymore, or even his attempt to access my trust fund. This was about a systematic pattern of fraud and exploitation that had harmed dozens, maybe hundreds of people. Looks like your legal instincts were right, Dad said, squeezing my hand. They usually are, I replied with a small smile. That's why I get paid the big bucks. My phone buzzed again, Melissa Winters this time, watching the news. Thank you for doing what I couldn't. Dinner next week? I think the NDA no longer applies now that federal charges have been filed. I have stories to tell. As I typed my reply, accepting her invitation. I reflected on how differently things had turned out from what I'd planned. 3 weeks ago, I should have been on a beach in the Maldives, starting a life with Connor. Instead, I was sitting in my childhood backyard helping build a federal case against him. It wasn't the honeymoon I'd expected. But justice, it turned out, was sweeter than any resort vacation could have been. And I was just getting warmed up. 4 months after my non-wedding, I stood at the back of a packed federal courtroom, watching Connor and his father enter in handcuffs. They'd both lost weight, their designer suits hanging loosely on diminished frames. Charles Pearson's silver hair had dulled, and Connor's confident stride had given way to a defeated shuffle. How quickly the mighty fall when their foundations are built on lies. Catherine caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small nod. Her testimony had been crucial in securing the 27-count indictment against her father and brother. In exchange, she'd received immunity and was now rebuilding her life far from Chicago, working at a nonprofit focused on financial literacy for women. Ironically similar to Melissa's volunteer work. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Harriman entered. I'd appeared before her many times and respected her no-nonsense approach to white-collar crime. The plea hearing was brief but consequential. Both Pearsons had accepted deals significant prison time in exchange for avoiding the maximum sentences they faced if convicted at trial. "Mr. Pearson," Judge Harriman addressed Connor directly. "Before I accept your plea, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. The court recognizes that your crimes extend beyond financial fraud. You systematically targeted women, manipulating them emotionally to gain access to their finances. While those actions may not all constitute chargeable offenses, they speak to your character and inform my acceptance of this agreement." Connor stared straight ahead, jaw tight. "I am accepting this plea deal," she continued, "with the understanding that you will serve no less than 7 years in federal prison, with no possibility of early release. You will make restitution to all identified victims, and you will have no contact whatsoever with Ms. Mitchell or any other victims of your schemes." The sentence was announced, papers signed, and just like that, the legal chapter of my ordeal closed. No dramatic courtroom confrontation, no tearful testimony, just the quiet machinery of justice processing 2 men who thought themselves above the law. Inside the courthouse, reporters clustered on the steps. I declined all interview requests, preferring to let the legal process speak for itself. But today, with the case concluded, I decided to make a brief statement. Justice was served today, not just for me, but for all the women who were targeted by Connor Pearson and the clients defrauded by Pearson Investments. I said into the forest of microphones. Financial abuse and fraud thrive in silence. By speaking up, we ensure that predators face consequences for their actions, a reporter called out. "Miss Mitchell, do you regret not discovering the truth before your wedding day?" I considered the question carefully. I regret that Connor Pearson was allowed to victimize women for years without consequence. I regret that systems existed that enabled his behavior. But I don't regret standing up when I finally saw the truth, even if the timing wasn't ideal. Another shouted, "What's next for you?" I smiled slightly. Professionally, I've recently been made partner at my firm, where I'll be heading a new division specializing in financial fraud and victim advocacy. Personally, I'm focused on healing and moving forward. What I didn't share was how that healing looked. The therapy sessions where I processed my anger and grief. The support group I joined for survivors of narcissistic relationships. The long conversations with my parents about rebuilding trust in my own judgment. I also didn't mention my ongoing work with the other women Connor had targeted. In the months since his arrest, 5 more had come forward, each with similar stories. We'd formed an unlikely alliance, sharing resources and supporting each other through the legal aftermath. Together, we'd established a foundation to help women recognize and escape financially exploitative relationships. Later that evening, I celebrated the conclusion of the case with a small dinner gathering with parents. Jessica, Melissa, and Mike Reeves, who'd become both a trusted colleague and friend during the investigation. To justice, my father toasted, raising his glass. And to my daughter, who refused to let powerful men dictate her worth. To new beginnings, my mother added. We clinked glasses, the simple ceremony marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As the evening wound down, Mike pulled me aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a small package. Consider it a case-closed gift. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a miniature gavel. Because you brought down the hammer of justice, he explained with a smile. And because you might need a reminder of your strength when things get tough again. Which they will, because that's life. I fastened it around my wrist, touched by the gesture. Thank you, Mike, for everything. Just doing my job, he replied with characteristic modesty. Though I admit watching the Pearsons fall has been particularly satisfying because they thought they were untouchable, because they underestimated you. He held my gaze a moment longer than necessary, then glanced away. Anyway, I should get going. Early start tomorrow. I watched him say his goodbyes to the others, wondering at the unexpected warmth his words had kindled. That was a complication for another day, I decided, when I was ready, if I ever would be. 6 months after the sentencing, I was reviewing case files in my new corner office when my assistant interrupted. There's a Ms. Jenkins here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. The name wasn't familiar, but that wasn't unusual. Since the Pearson case, I'd become known for handling financial abuse cases, and many women sought me out without referrals. Send her in, I said, closing my laptop. Emily Jenkins was in her early 20s, clutching a designer handbag that looked out of place with her simple dress and nervous demeanor. Ms. Mitchell, she began, perching on the edge of the visitor chair. Thank you for seeing me. I've been following your story and I think ... I think I might be in a similar situation. I listened as she described her relationship with a charming investment banker whose interest in her had intensified after learning about her family's real estate holdings. The pattern was familiar isolation from friends, questions about finances, unexplained access to her accounts. I found these on his computer, she said, sliding a USB drive across my desk. Banking records, background research on me and my family, even a timeline for, her voice broke, for when to propose, when to suggest joining accounts, when to secure assets, whatever that means. I felt a chill of recognition. You did the right thing by coming here, Emily. May I review these documents? She nodded, twisting her hands in her lap. Am I overreacting? My friends think he's perfect, successful, attentive, generous. Trust your instincts, I said, remembering how I'd dismissed my own unease. They're trying to protect you. The documents confirmed her fears. Her boyfriend was following a playbook disturbingly similar to Connor's. We spent the next hour developing a safety plan for her to disentangle herself from the relationship and secure her assets. As she was leaving, visibly relieved, she turned back. How did you find the strength to walk away, especially so publicly? I thought about that moment in the service corridor, watching Connor demean my father, and the clarity it had brought. I realized that staying would cost me more than leaving ever could, I answered. Not just financially, but in self-respect, in authentic relationships, in the life I truly wanted. After she left, I added her case to my growing files documenting patterns of financial exploitation. Each folder represented a woman who'd found her voice, who'd chosen herself over a destructive relationship. That evening, I joined my father for our weekly dinner, a tradition we'd started after the wedding debacle. He'd recently expanded his catering business, ironically benefiting from the publicity surrounding our family's ordeal. How's the new client? He asked as we settled into our favorite booth at Luigi's. Promising, I replied. She caught on early before major damage was done. Because of you, he said proudly. Because your story showed her what to watch for. I smiled, feeling the weight of that responsibility and privilege. Maybe something good came from the whole mess after all. More than something. He reached across the table to squeeze my hand. You're changing lives, princess, including your own. He was right. The journey from that wedding day to now had transformed me professionally, personally, even spiritually. I'd discovered resilience I didn't know I possessed, built a community of survivors and advocates, and found purpose in helping others navigate the terrain I'd stumbled through. Later, walking home along the lakefront, I paused to watch the sunset paint the Chicago skyline in gold and rose. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. * dinner tomorrow? New Thai place opens near your office. No shop talk, I promise. **. I smiled and typed back. * sounds perfect. 7 p.m.? * his response came immediately. * it's a date. Unless you want to call it a professional meal between colleagues again. * I laughed. A appreciating his patience as I navigated post-Connor territory. We'd been professionally dining for weeks now, both of us carefully avoiding labels while enjoying each other's company. He understood my caution, my need to trust my own judgment again. Looking out over the water, I felt a sense of peace that had been elusive for months. The anger that had fueled me through investigations and court proceedings had gradually transformed into something more sustainable: determination to create change, commitment to helping others, and growing acceptance of my own journey. Connor and his father would serve their sentences, their empire of deception dismantled. The women they'd targeted were reclaiming their lives, their voices, their power. The legal precedents established by our case were already influencing others across the country. I fingered the gavel charm on my bracelet, thinking about justice, not just the legal kind served in courtrooms, but the personal justice of reclaiming your life from those who tried to diminish it. My wedding day hadn't given me the happily ever after I'd planned, but it had given me something more valuable: the opportunity to discover my own strength, to stand firmly in my truth, and to help others do the same. Sometimes the greatest love story isn't about finding the right partner, but about becoming the person you were meant to be. Someone who recognizes their worth isn't determined by someone else's validation, who stands up when it would be easier to stay silent, who chooses integrity even when it comes at a cost. That's the story I was still writing, one day at a time. And unlike my relationship with Connor, this one was built on a foundation that couldn't be shaken: the unshakable knowledge of my own value, the support of people who truly loved me, and the purpose I'd found in turning my pain into power. As the last rays of sunset faded from the sky, I turned toward home, grateful for the unexpected path that had led me here, to this moment of hard-won peace, to this life rebuilt on my own terms. It wasn't the future I'd once imagined. It was better,